For nearly 20 years, as I have been involved in learning about fulvic substances and using them in my medical practice, there have been continuous discussions that fulvic acid is the missing link, that it is the key to health and longevity. However, in our experience here at Monolife Laboratory, there is a lot of confusion as to what fulvic acid actually is. Today, we are going to clear up this confusion. Thanks for joining us in this conversation. My name is Dr. Elizabeth Wanek, and I'm the President and Medical Director of Monolife Laboratory. I am trained as a general and pediatric surgeon. In 1998, my career took a turn into functional medicine, which led to an introduction to Dr. Faust and Monolife products in 2005. After studying about Wujinsan, our pure fulvic isolate product, I ordered a gallon to use myself as an experiment. Before I could have a personal experience with the product, however, a patient presented to my office with severe ulcerative colitis. He was having 8 to 10 bloody bowel movements per day on maximal medical therapy. Essentially, he was told there was nothing else that could be done for him. Based on the knowledge that fulvic acid had been used for thousands of years in Chinese medicine for many different types of digestive disorders, including nausea, vomiting, intractable diarrhea, and colitis, I asked my patient to start Wujinsan therapy. Within 2 weeks, the bloody bowel movements stopped. The patient was able to gradually reintroduce foods, and he started gaining weight. With what at the time I considered almost a miraculous recovery, I wanted to learn as much as I could about why and how Wujinsan did what it did. This was the beginning of an almost 20 years now of experience with working with Monolife products in my clinical practice, and of having the honor and the privilege of learning from and working with Dr. Robert Faust, a world's expert on a very complex subject. Dr. Faust has a Bachelor of Science with a major in entomology and applied ecology. He has a master's in agronomy and a PhD in organic and biodynamic agriculture and integrated biomass conversion systems. As I said, he's a world's expert in agroecology. For nearly 50 years, Dr. Faust has provided integrated services throughout the world, including the United States, Egypt, Belize, Jamaica, Ecuador, and Mexico. His work assists in reducing dependency on chemical fertilizers and pesticides, uses new biotechnology and foliar fertilizers to increase crop yields, and create sustainable agricultural systems. As I wrote this, basically, I'm thinking Dr. Faust was green before anybody really knew what green meant. Dr. Faust has lectured extensively in the United States, China, and New Zealand. He is a published author in peer-reviewed agricultural journals. He is an active member of the International Humic Substances Society and the Humic Products Trade Association, working to establish standards for the quantification of humic and fulvic substances in the industry. Dr. Faust was recently nominated as an honorated listee and a distinguished scientist by Marquis Who's Who. Welcome, Dr. Faust.
Hello, thank you, Dr. Wanek, and we hope to answer some questions I've answered before in some of my YouTubes called The Truth About Fulvic Acid, or The Truth About Humic Acid. And we hope to cover some of this today. And yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about your life's work and your inspiration for the Monolife products that you created.
My goal has been since my college days, or towards the end of my college days, when I was running the family farm and I was working with my Amish and Mennonite neighbors. I'd gone to the College of Agriculture, but I really learned about farming from my Amish and Mennonite neighbors. And they introduced me to biodynamics and organic farming. And there was no question to me, because I could see it with my own eyes, that they were highly successful. I don't think anybody denies that fact. So I was seeing things that I wasn't taught in agricultural college. Then I started to realize that it's more of a conditioning process. It's more of indoctrination, land grant colleges. And the grant money comes from big petrochemical and agrochemical industries. And there's a certain program, and that's what you're supposed to stick to. Then, as things progressed in my career, and I was working as a consultant to the seed industry. And specifically, in the case that I'm referring to, the seed potato industry. Seed potatoes have to be disease-free. They have to be tested and scouted. They're grown in mountain valleys. And in the case of this particular situation, it was in Flathead Valley, Montana. It's an isolated area, and this is where seed potatoes are grown. So we were trying to find a way to increase the yield, quality, and disease resistance. And I had read back in the days before computers or internet, saw a little ad in Montana Farmer Stockman, and it talked about something called clodbuster, humate. I'd never heard of humate. What's humate? I've heard about humus because that's something referred to in biodynamics, and it's a crucial factor in biodynamics. But what is it? We didn't learn about this. So I got a little sample from the company and I put it in my little greenhouse and on some very poor depleted soil and in pots in the greenhouse with a control and treatments, and planted sweet corn, and the difference was night and day. It improved the soil. The corn plants were spectacularly improved with the humate. And then I continued on because that's part of the scientific method is observation. And my observations were valid. And so I continued that work. And I realized that, yeah, there's something about this. I don't know what it is, but it works. And so the next step was to try it on large field trials, which we did in seed potatoes, 40-acre field, and split it in two. This is after buying a truckload. And the difference was no insect damage on the treatment, the humic, what we call humate treatment, and the control side was tremendous insect damage across all the plants, leaf feeding, and shorter plants. So that's where it all started. You had to believe your eyes, and I did, and I wasn't going to back up. Even though the academics and the county agents and other people around just poo-pooed it as snake oil. So that got actually egged me on, you might say. You know, why are they calling this snake oil? Mm-hmm. When it seems to be what we're looking for, something that a way to eliminate, give some kind of resistance somehow to plants against diseases and insects seems important to me. So 50 years later, yes, it's important. And we know why, or we know why it works. We know what's involved. We didn't have the science then. So that's what started the whole thing. And then my research around the world, trying to access as much literature and data as I could. And most of it was foreign data, Russia, China, Eastern Europe. And it's gone from there to many, many crops, tens of thousands of acres. And as today, my company, Faust Bioagricultural Services, is the largest producer of a registered fulvic acid product in the country. So it started with maybe an ounce of product of humate. That's how it started. It started with the truth, and the truth is in the eye of the beholder.
Right. So this observation, these observational things that happen during your lifetime basically helped you to understand there is essentially mana in the soil, correct?
Yes, you realize that there's something missing. Of course, I already had studied biodynamics, and so I knew biodynamic theory, but it lacked a scientific explanation. But we knew that biodynamics worked, and we knew something about it, that compost made all the difference, and that you could return soils to productivity from depletion. You could maintain soils. And my neighbors in Pennsylvania, my ancestors had been farming in that area since 1733. And my neighbors had also. So there was an example of sustainability that obviously worked. And the basis of their system was mixed agriculture, where you had manure, you composted, and you crop rotated with alfalfa and clover, and you had cows, and that's a sustainable system. So I knew it worked because I grew up with it. And then I studied Enifred Pfeiffer and some of the proponents of biodynamics, and tried to understand biodynamics, which was cast in more of a spiritual light at the time. Because if you don't if you don't have the science, it's either magic or something else. So prior to science, you have magic or alchemy,
Right.
and so that's really the basis of it right there.
So then you ultimately recognize that these things, these humates in the soil, these life-giving substances that were growing incredibly healthy plants in large amounts, also then extrapolated to the human organism as well. That you knew that there were benefits for the human body as well as the plant body.
Yeah, well, it started with livestock. So that if you have that cycle in nature where you have a healthy soil, a healthy plant, and then the healthy plants are consumed by animals, you have healthy and productive animals. Really basic stuff, that they knew 200 years ago.
Right.
And so I was a livestock producer, and I have always been pretty much involved in livestock production. Well, it's not a long move from livestock, cattle, sheep,
right.
pigs, to humans.
Right.
And so over the years, more and more came out about the benefits of livestock. And I worked with the Dutch government at one point, where we did trials on baby pigs to find an alternative to antibiotics in feed by using my humic acid product, and also dairy cattle. And so these are valid scientific studies that are double blind, and prove the benefits again. Prove the benefits that the humic substances could be fed directly to livestock,
right,
with the reduction of disease or elimination of disease on a preventative basis,
right.
Increased milk production, increased growth, increased health. And so, like I say, it's not a big jump from that to humans. We're basically have the same systems that pigs have.
Right, and then coming off the science of the history of use of fulvic substances in Chinese medicine, you kind of correlated all of this information.
Yes, and then as we went deeper, and the internet came in, and information was more available, and I went to international meetings of scientists that study the subject, and also working directly with scientists in China. I managed to get a hold of research from China, 7-year research project, massive project in China with many scientists that published a book, 7 years of research on fulvic acid, humic substances, we call them. And it was human health, it was plant diseases, it was crops, many subjects. And it opened my eyes. And I found out the word Wu San, which is the Chinese name for fulvic acid. And it means black gold medicine.
Yes.
And it's golden medicine. They just call it Wu or golden medicine. So it's called gold medicine because the color is gold. Right. And it has antiviral effects. We didn't know why. Now we know better. We know kind of why. It's antiviral. It has many effects. And now the science has kind of caught up a little bit. And we know that fulvic acid is just a fraction. It's a substance defined as a fraction. And within that fraction, there are literally hundreds of individual organic compounds.